Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you to all the people that are here in the chat. And I'm pretty sure that Becky already heard this presentation, but many of you haven't. And this was my final MVP presentation, my final project. There was a lot of work involved in this, but I was very happy to do it. It was very exciting. So first, why do I care about it? I care a lot about this project. Okay, because this, and this is me. I grew up going to a smallholder farm, like a small farm. My great granduncle was a farmer. I saw how hard the work is there. Like I grew up like every year going like feeding the chickens and like running from dogs and like playing with the cows and everything. So that really taught me about like how to care or why to care about nature. Like I grew up loving nature. That was something that was always very, very present. And actually, that's why I'm a biologist. So it has like a big psychological component or like an emotional component right there. Okay, so now that I told you guys why I care so much, I want to introduce you to what is my project. Facilitating smallholder farmer engagement with data-driven agriculture, a case of study in the Yucatán Peninsula in Mexico. If you see something like this, it's because I moved my presentation from Mac to Windows to Mac to Windows to Mac. So things like that will happen. Okay, so start with agriculture. Like you start thinking about agriculture, and I want to show a little bit of context before we start. If we see it here in this map, you can see that like the farm size distribution pole. If we see red and yellow, they're very small farms, and very large are like blue and green. So we can see a pattern over here. On this side, we have mobile data coverage across croplands. Green dots and red dots, it's slow coverage, slow internet. And we can see here, very fast speed like we have right now. And here, we have climate change vulnerability. So again, we can see that over here, they're not so vulnerable, but over this side, they are pretty vulnerable. Although, of course, the deepest red is the most vulnerable. So what does this tell them? Many farms in the global south are small, like less than 2 hectares. They do have connectivity limitations, and they are the most vulnerable to climate change. And they would greatly benefit from technological advances. Oh, sorry, this is the keyboard. And this is where my project focuses. All those technological advances that could help smallholder farmers in the Gulf. Okay, so this is the location of my project. Here we go. So here in the middle of the Yucatán Peninsula. It's a tiny, tiny village that they are having a lot of impact in the region. So a little bit of context on the Yucatán state before. Is in the southeast part of Mexico. It was historically very important for the Maya civilization, pyramids, all of that that you most likely know. And there's approximately 8 million Mayan people, and they have a very active economy. I can go much more in depth right now, but I want to go fast to what I did. Like I said, southern Yucatán state, like this is the Yucatán Peninsula. From here is Yucatán, is Campeche, and my location is here, like 2 to 4 hours away from Merida. Why do I say 2 to 4 hours? Because if you're driving a private car, it's 2 hours, but if you're taking a bus, it's 4 or more hours. Because there's like basically one road, and the bus stops at every village from here to Merida. And I put this code here from the leader of the organization that I'm going to present a bit. They said we chose Jackson King, that is the name of the town, to start this project because of how marginalized it was, because how poor it was. We wanted to help. Frankly, it was like the poorest village in the region. Okay, so who did I work with? is Los Guardianes de las Semillas in Spanish, or the Seed Guardians. Here in the back is like their headquarters. It's very interesting what are they doing. And this is the leadership team of the Seed Guardians. They are Mayan. Like they're so Mayan that they day-to-day speak Mayan. Like their second language is Spanish, and they mock me a lot because they didn't speak Mayan. But they were very, very, very nice people to me. They were very focused on helping the community. Okay, so first of all, I have to say the United Nations Development Program in Mexico helped me a lot getting this project, because I was supposed to go to Kenya before, but COVID happened, and this was something that came up, but it was amazing. So, like I was saying, Guardianes de las Semillas, or the Seed Guardians, are a Mayan smallholder farm organization focused on improving agricultural performance in the region, on maintain ancestral traditions and culture, and preserve and share ancestral maize seeds, because we're very used to like the yellow corn. Most likely you guys have seen this viral video of I Love Corn, the little kid, but that's just yellow corn. But a lot of people don't know that there's many varieties of maize corn. You can see here they're selling like all of these types. And actually, I was thinking on my way here that it's very interesting that we're about to be hit by a hurricane, because the Seed Guardians were born from a hurricane emergency. In 2002, Hurricane Isidore, like basically destroyed the whole agricultural sector in the Yucatán Peninsula. It went down, it went across the state and flooded all the fields. And basically, with that, it was just not only that it destroyed the crops, but it destroyed and they lost all the seeds. So they didn't have anything to harvest, and they didn't have seeds to recover the crops. So it was very, very, very disruptive, sure. From that, they started the Yucatan Seed Fairs. What is that? There are annual fairs that they do annually, organized by them, where they call people from all around Mexico to bring different seeds. The first one was made because they were in an emergency. But in that first one, this is what I was saying. At the hurricane passed, many farmers lost all their production, and there was a lack of native and traditional seeds. Those fairs were born, like I was saying, to recover all their seeds, but they became very popular because the farmers started to realize that farmers in other parts of Mexico had seeds that they hadn't seen in many years. So they were like, "Oh my God, I thought that that I had lost this seed, but like I'm seeing that people in other parts of Mexico have it," and they were very excited. They care a lot about their maize, about their corn, about their tortillas. I ate like 200,000 tortillas when I was there. It was incredible. But they had to stop during COVID, of course. And they're managed by seed partners. A little bit of agricultural context. They have two different types of agricultural methods. They have the milpas that are managed mostly by men, and they're outside the urban centers. They're big farms. They're very structured. They don't like the diversity. They have diversity, but it's not very high because they have mainly corn and other small crops. But it's their main economic activity, and it's very important for home feeding, especially like to produce their own corn for eating, but also to sell. But also they have the solares. They're the backyard gardens that are women, children are more involved in that. So if you're walking around town, you see these little houses and with a big backyard, and they're planting a lot of different things. It's very interesting because they have chickens, they have fruits, they have planting, they have a lot of things. And it's used to support feeding and family economics. So it's like a secondary activity, but they're like everyone is involved, so it's very cool. Okay, so The seed gardens, how are they helping the farmers to improve their performance? They are doing biological pest control. They're trying to move their agriculture from using a lot of fertilizers to organic fertilizers. So they're applying microorganisms and fertilizers and participatory seed improvement that like they're following some of the plants and the ones that have better seeds or bigger corns and everything, they're planting them again. So it's very, very interesting. But also they're doing seed distribution, seed conservation, and periodic crop monitoring from pests, diseases, and productivity. And here, there's a lot of data generated because at first they started with like 5 families that were like joined them, but they started to see that things were going well for them for those 5 families. So more people started to join. So right now, I think there are like 40 families, and each farm they have to distribute it, conserve the seeds, and monitor their crops. So there's a lot of data that is being managed by them. This is the team. These guys were amazing. Here down are like the main leadership team. I stayed at her house for about a month. I had to sleep in a hammock. I'll show you some like nice pictures later if I have time. And these guys up top, they're like the younger people that are more interested in agriculture. Basically, they're the station agents of this organization, which is very interesting. I'll tell you a little bit later why, like those dynamics between young people that are not interested in agriculture. But go ahead. Okay, so the project, what did I do? I love this picture because this was the first time that I went to the field, and like that was maybe 2-3 days after I arrived to Mexico. I was very scared because I didn't know too much about the project, but everyone was like that. They were all receiving me with a smile, and they were all very, very cool with me. So like I love this picture because I felt like, okay, this is a nice project. I felt good. I don't love to put a lot of text in my presentations. I usually don't, but for this one especially, I thought that it was important because of the quotes. Like I will tell you a little bit later all the methodology that I use, but I wanted to start with this. He is Chucho Jesus. He's the agroecology coordinator, and when I asked him about the data collection, he said, "Data collection, I think is constant because every year it changes. Last year there were storms and there were a lot of pests. It was overwhelmed. There were many different types of pests and diseases. And that is what we're missing to compare year by year. What happened? Which pests did we have? What happened in the milpa?" So they have a pressing need of improving their data collection processes. This is Daniel Alfonso. He is a spiritual leader. He's one of the most involved with man culture. And he told me this: we send the seeds, but what's in return? Because remember, in the seed fairs, they're sending seeds to other little communities that are needing them. He says, who has the seeds? Did they save something for next year? Are they sharing them with someone else? That is also very important for them. It's like, okay, I'll give you seeds, but you have to share them with someone else. You have to do something like that. So they also needed a way to track the seeds that they were providing in the seed fairs. Okay, so the previous data collection process worked, but it was very time consuming. There was a lot of repetition. It was difficult to track. They were doing this. I took this picture. So they just had many notebooks. And they just wrote everything by hand. It was very difficult to access and compare information. Like imagine if you're tracking 10, 20, 30 farms and all the information is in notebooks. Chucho, the agroecology coordinator, he had to like move everything to an Excel database, but sometimes he didn't have time. So it was basically a little bit of a mess. And something very, very interesting from this community is that they relied on in-person communication. It was weird that everyone knew everything about everyone, but it wasn't written anywhere. Like there was also a lot of like oral transmission of culture, a lot of oral transmission on many things, but they were very used to like this like uh, organizing data. And as I was saying, as the organization grew, COVID made everything more complicated. These issues exacerbated. So how are we going to help them? Developing a new tool for agricultural data collection using COBOL Toolbox. I'll explain what is that in a minute. So the first thing I did was, what data do they need to track? So that was the first thing. I did 17 semi-structured interviews, 3 working groups with the extension agents that I showed you before, and lots of direct conversation and observation. This is a picture of one of the focus groups. This is a picture of one of the interviews, and this is a picture of that same first outing with them. And I try to talk with everyone. And most of the conversations I recorded, and then I transcribed them. Shout out to Becky that told me how to do it in a very efficient way. Then I created a database of data variables and stages, and I worked with United Nations Development Program Mexico to create a COBOL toolbox that is basically an app. I will show you in a bit how does that look on a phone. And quality control. Basically, it was a lot of back and forth with the guardians, showing them, hey, this is the information that I've seen that you guys are needing. Do you think we need more? Do you think that you need less? Then we went to you. Well, I went to UNDP Mexico and told them, okay, this is what they're saying. Please welcome that they need. What do you think? So it was a lot of like iterations processes, but after that, there was the system deployment. Let me see one thing. Okay, sorry. I just wanted to double check that all the presentation, all the slides were there. Okay, so the status right now, and like how it was a couple of months ago, is the system deployment. After I created the COBOL toolbox, like I said, this is just like an overview of what I did. We're going to dive a little bit deeper in the next slides. So do some field testing, getting the promoters, getting familiarized with the tool. And I think this was the first year that the harvest and the seed fair was tracked virtual. Well, we can jump this part. Okay, so the new data collection system, and again, I'm sorry if I'm going too fast, but I'm a little bit in a rush, but I want to cover everything. Okay, so this is how you look at the COBOL toolbox, at the virtual tool that we developed in real life. This is an actual screenshot of my phone. And this is basically a survey that every extension agent can have in their phones, because most of them have smartphones, and they can fill out in the field. COBOL toolbox allows all the extension agents to fill out the form even if they don't have internet. And as soon as they have internet, all the data goes to the cloud. So also, COBOL toolbox takes the geographic coordinates, so they will be able to see where did they take or where they gather that information. And also COBOL toolbox, it can make like automatic reports. So the thing that they were struggling a lot to do before with just pen and paper, now they can do it with just their phones in like a couple of days. So the new system will allow the guardians to get GPS locations of each farm monitored, track crop productivity per farm, per village, or per maize variety, track pests, types, and prevalence, collect and track intermediate plant measurements to evaluate crop performance, know the seed availability in the region, record data on seed recipients from seed fairs, compare crop performance year to year, all of that in minutes. They don't have to take hours and hours and hours. Okay, so the findings. What did I find? And like besides helping them with the tool, what else did I find? I with all the interviews, I transcribed them, and I did a qualitative data analysis, and this was one of the results. Word cloud that I wanted to show like some of the most important things that they identified. So first, as the Seed Guardians, of course, is their organization, but also something really important for them is the Mayan culture, organic agriculture, because right now there's like this kind of fight between like old school, they're using a ton of fertilizer with chemical fertilizers, and this new wave of the seed guardians that are trying to move to organic agriculture. Rain, climate change, heat and drought. Like I think right now, again, with the hurricane coming is a great example or a great segue to say that climate change is very real. From all the 17 interviews and the focus groups and everything, everyone mentioned something related to climate change. Like without fail, everyone said something about climate change. Everyone said something about how the weather has been changing. And well, I can keep talking about this for hours. This was very interesting to see, like what were the most common topics. So let's keep going. Okay, I'm going to choose just like one of these quotes to for the sake of time. If it was logged in automatically, I think it could be a huge improvement. Right now, I have to write all the information in my notebook, then transcribe it on my computer, and then I make the graphs. It is a lot of time. Again, this one, we have always struggled a lot with systematization. For me, data systematization is a huge document. For them, when I tried to explain what was the systematization, like an app, they thought that systematization was like a book like this big with a lot of things. So they were kind of scared. But maybe there's some other ways like this. When I was explaining the code, they were like, okay, this is cool. Like we like talking via WhatsApp and like seeing memes and all of that. So we can share all of that. We can see all this information in our phones. Like, this is nice. Okay. So data collection is a critical need for the seed guardian missions. Well, okay, I think I already covered all of this. But also, I love this one. This will be the first harvest and seed fair ever recorded digitally. I have been having some issues like contacting them again to see how everything's going, because I think they're very, very busy because this is the first year post-COVID that they're doing everything again. But it seems like they're doing pretty well, because as soon as I left, we had a few meetings where I clarified some things and they were having some issues and some doubts. But usually the bad news are the first news that you hear, and everything seems to be fine. And I'm in contact with people from the United Nations in Mexico, and everyone seems to be doing just fine. But like this is definitely something that I would love to keep supporting them. So maybe in the future Tropilunch, I will report back. So the organization, also something that I tried to do was to gather what were the perceptions of the seed guardians in the region. One of these quotes, the seed guardians are widely recognized for the respect they give to each guardian. Each farmer that joins them becomes a guardian. So if I'm not part of the organization, I'm just a farmer, but as soon as I'm part of the organization, I'm a seed guardian. And that's something for them to be proud of. To their knowledge, they know that the recommendations that we give them are for their best interest. So also something interesting that I also like to share, like among us that we work in development and things like that, is that they told me many development groups and many students and many organizations have come here and they gather a lot of information because we're doing some cool things, but they never come back. Or they gather a lot of data and they never send it back. They never tell us anything back. So they were at first they were very hesitant in working with me because they said like they thought that I was going to try to steal their data or trying to gather money from them or something like that. So there was a little bit of friction first. But and also something that I tried to do was that as soon as we developed the tool, I gave them all the passwords, everything. So right now I don't have access to the tool. Everything is theirs because that was very important for them. This data that we collect is ours. This is ours. This is our culture. This is our thing. So that was something very important. Oh, well, they are prioritizing the engagement with young people. Again, another topic that I would love to cover way more, but and I'm pretty sure that most of you know that young people don't want to work the fields, and especially in the South, because there are people, especially here in Mexico, if you see the map of the Yucatán Peninsula, on the east side, they have Yucatán, and on the west side, they have Cozumel, Isla Mujeres, all these like hyper touristic destinations where there's a lot of money coming. So a lot of the young people say like, why would I stay here working the fields where I can go across the state and work at a hotel and make a lot more money? So that's a lot of friction, and that's also a very interesting thing because, like I showed you before, the extension agents, they're young people that are really interested in keeping their man culture. They're really interested in keeping their crops, but also they're interested in capitalizing them, which is something a little bit different of what the old people want. So that's also, I think I'm covering that later, but that's also very interesting that they're trying to look at their culture in a different way. Climate change, I put that in red because what I said before, that everyone talked about that. One of the quotes, climate change has changed a lot of things. We're aware of that. It has affected the crops a lot because the rainy season was delayed in the community. The rains are starting just now, but they're not enough to plant the crops. This one was also very interesting. When I was a kid and the rain came down here in the village, the weather was very pleasant, very cool. But now when it rains, instead of being cool, it gets hotter. And as the year moves on, the temperature increases even more, very much easier. It rains and it feels like steamy and hot. And this one was also something I think short but very powerful. Sometimes it rains a lot, sometimes it doesn't rain at all. And that's a big challenge for us. Because as I was telling before, all of their customs are transmitted like orally. So the grandparents tell their kids that you have to plant this type of crops in this month, because in this month the rains come. So they keep doing it over and over and over. But what if they keep doing that over and over and over? The rains never come because they don't have a track of in which month the rains are coming. That's what was happening, and that's something a big impact that the seed gardens are having. That they actually realize that the rains are coming later, and they, with their guardians, with the members of the organization, they're actually moving their the dates or the months in which they are planting the seeds. And actually, yeah, they're having good results. And also, they mentioned how hot it can get in the dry season, but that their techniques increase soil humidity and organic matter, which can help. And what they were telling me is that sometimes, especially between April and May, the temperatures can get to 112, 15 degrees Fahrenheit, which is crazy. And they keep working there, so it's very extreme. So some conclusions. We're going time. Sure. The seed guardians are doing an exemplary job of community and resilience building among Mayan farmers. And even if they're too cautious, they're open to work with external organizations which can help their vision. They're willing to receive other MDP students, but they're willing to do it in their own terms, or like having an open conversation of the expectations. So potential expansion. The seed guardians want to engage with as many Mayan communities as possible because Mayan communities are also in Belize, Guatemala, and Mexico. The use of this tool could be the start of a process of diffusion of innovation among Mayan farmers. For people that don't know how the diffusion of innovation model works, is how all of the innovation that we get in life works. So first, we have the innovators, the people that like to have the latest of the latest. And let's talk about, for example, the tool that we're using. The seed guardians are here. The innovators, 2.5% of, let's say, all the Mayan farmers. If they grow it a little bit, they can go and attract these early adopters. That'll be at 13.5%. But the thing is that is very, very important is that it's very hard to jump from the early adopters to the early majority. Like the chasm there, that is not easy to get. So you have to be very organized in how are you diffusing that innovation to move to the early majority, then the late majority, and the laggards that are probably in a few years, the very old people that say, no, I want to keep planting things like I've been doing it my whole life. But I thought that this was a very interesting example of how you can approach this innovation in like very complex contexts. Data-driven agriculture interventions can be a game changer for smallholder farmers and other vulnerable groups. And it doesn't have to be resource intensive. You don't need $60 million to do this. Like my resources were very, very limited because I had to create my project in like 1 month. But I was able to do it. And I was able to create a very interesting tool that they're using. Also, and something that I usually highlight a lot, it is very important, very, very important to understand the specific needs and context to improve traction and user engagement. I obviously I saw things that they could do better, but they were just interested in that. I told them like, hey, what if we do this? They're like, no, we want to do this. And if they're receiving what they want and they're doing what they're tracking what they want to track, they're gonna use it. Instead of me saying like, yeah, you have to track this and this and this and this, they're like, I don't care about that. Even if I think that it could be great for them. Also, something very important is technology can be used to attract young people to agriculture. That was very interesting too, because when I started like showing them like, hey, you can do this on your phone and you can share it with through WhatsApp or you can do it. I could feel that people were like, young people were like, why are they talking about agriculture but like also using their phones? Like what was going on there? So I think that's also like something that could be used. Like, I would love to explore that in future projects. And lastly, climate change is a critical concern for smallholder farmers. Besides maybe 2 or 3 farms, I would say 95% of the agriculture there is rain-fed. And like people used to say that climate change was a long-term issue. It's not. Climate change is here and is working havoc very hard now. And adaptation needs to be prioritized by governments and other organizations. With this tool, they probably will realize how are the rains changing and how are the impacts of this weather or this climate change affecting their crops. So yeah, that is also very important. And that's it.